Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to our May 2nd morning session. I'd like to thank those who are here in attendance and also those who are watching us on YouTube, wherever that may be. I call the meeting to order, and as customary, I'd like to call on Commissioner Dickie Braswell for the prayer, and we have American Legion Post 270 of Smithfield, who's going to lead us in the pledge. So if you would please rise.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this wonderful day. Thank you for the ability to meet here in freedom and discuss the public's business openly and for the best interest of all the citizens of Johnston County. May everything we do be a blessing to the people in this county. May we always consider the stance of those that are less fortunate. Bless our country, bless our home, bless our families. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
And salute. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, the first item up on our agenda is
Does Colonel Boyd have anything to say?
yes, he's the first up on the agenda.
Okay.
So Memorial Day proclamation, and Robert Boyette, if you come, and if you don't mind taking the liberty, I think Commissioner Braswell would like to read that proclamation.
Yes, sir.
You want me to read it first, Colonel, or you want to say what you want to say?
Go right ahead, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you, sir. The proclamation by the Johnston County Board of Commissioners for May 30th, 2022. Whereas on Memorial Day, America undertakes its solemn duty to remember the brave Americans who sacrificed their lives for the cause of freedom and the security of our nation. Whereas we are constantly reminded that there are those in the world who would attempt to deprive us of our freedom and undermine our nation's very foundation. And whereas military men and women from Johnston County have served their nation throughout American history, with 248 Johnston County service members losing their lives in action in World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, and the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. And whereas by honoring these proud soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardmen lost throughout our country's history, we renew our commitment to upholding the democratic ideals that they fought and died to preserve. And whereas the citizens of Johnston County must never take for granted our privileges and freedom or forget to give thanks and honor to those who risk their lives so that we may enjoy our many blessings. Now, therefore, the Johnston County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim May 30th, 2022 as Memorial Day in Johnston County and urges citizens to remember the bravery of those who gave their lives so that their sacrifices served as a reminder of the cost of freedom.
All right.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Boyette, yes.
On May 30th, on Monday, will be Memorial Day, and we will have a ceremony here in the Old Superior Courtroom at 11 o'clock. And in 1964, 20 years before Ronald Reagan was president, one of the things that he said was freedom is one generation away from extinction. So I appreciate the board and their support to the veterans of Johnston County and to the men and women who've paid the ultimate sacrifice for our country and our county and our state. Thank you.
Thank you. Any
Mr.
comments?
Chair.
Yes, sir.
Well, I move we adopt the proclamation.
All right. There's a second.
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Proclamation is approved. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Colonel, for all you do for the veterans in this county, and you do a great job.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your service. We appreciate
Thank you,
that.
Colonel.
Next up is approval and discussion of the agenda. Any changes to agenda that we need to make? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Move the agenda be approved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Agenda is approved. Next up, we have several consent agenda items. I'll read through those very briefly to cover those. We have approval of our April 4th meeting, both the morning and the night session. We have a public hearing called for our next year's fiscal budget, and that looks like June the 6th, 10 o'clock. We will have our first meeting on that. We also have some approvals for appointments to boards. We have a proclamation for EMS week, some surplus vehicle sales for emergency services and for the sheriff's office, and then also emergency services requesting approval of a sole source contract. And let's see, resolution supporting NCDOT statewide project funds. And we have 4 budget revisions for the health department, the jail, the sheriff's office, and special appropriations, and also some appointments to the Bentonville Community Building Board and our Economic Development Board representing micro, and then finally our tax releases and refunds. Any of those items need to be removed from the consent agenda for discussion? If not,
I'm satisfied with the sheriff's surplus vehicles. I usually raise a question about that, so I'm good with it.
okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve consent agenda A through K as presented.
Second it.
All right. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor, then say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Next up, we have public comments. This is the time for anyone present to come forward to address something that is not already on the agenda. And if you would, please state your name and general location, such as your town or township. Speakers are given 3 minutes to address the board, and at all times shall maintain proper decorum and make their comments in a civil manner. And just a reminder that this is a time for the board to listen to public comments. They're not responses to any impromptu questions. So if there's anyone here who wishes to come forward and speak, please come forward now. All right, I'm going to take that as a no. Do we have any public comments, Madam Clerk? All right, so we will move on to the next item, which is a public hearing to discuss fire district boundary revisions. And Fire Marshal Adam Stanley will come forward and address that for us.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners.
Morning.
Thank you. So the public hearing is for the fire district boundary revisions, and the growth in Johnston County is causing more and more of this to happen with adding streets and road mileage into these subdivisions. And this is one particular case that we're asking for is because it has moved a particular subdivision, half of it within a 5 mile, half of it outside of 5 mile. When we talk about insurance ratings and services and for the fire protection district. So the current way it's set up now with that subdivision that we're talking about, it actually splits between, it was 2 different fire districts, became 1 fire district. That once became a subdivision, now became 1 fire district within it. That caused half the homeowners to have what we call from a 3 to a 9 rating. So half of them would have a lower rating, half of them would have a higher rating. So since we discovered all that, putting it all together, we found it was in the best interest to put it under, to measure if it was closer to another fire district, which it was. The Wynn Fire District can cover the entire subdivision area within that 5 mile. We did explore many options. We met with the chiefs on multiple times, and there was an option of splitting the subdivision with 2 different fire districts, but that would cause a problem because we 2 different insurance ratings as well as 2 different fire protection tax ratings as well. So the best interest was put it all in one. The other issue was based on the standard, it's contiguous lines, so one fire department will cross into another fire district to get to somebody else's house. So we're able to bring it all within 1 fire district now. So that's what we're asking for, is to approve the current, the new fire protection district and insurance districts 4 on Exhibit A on your packet.
All right, I do need to go back. I communicated, like I do with my wife, sometimes in my head, so I did want to make sure that we had opened the public hearing prior to you speaking, so if we can make that retroactive there, the public hearing is open. So any questions for Mr. Stanley?
I've got a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, the creation of these subdivisions and new citizens in there brought this to focus, but what was the status before these subdivisions were created? The people living in that area, albeit maybe not that many residents, but they had lower insurance?
They had,
No.
yes, sir. So they had the same rating as they did because they were inside that 5 mile. But once this subdivision was created, the roads leading into the subdivision, if you think of a field or pasture that's now turned a subdivision, where the fire department will respond to the driveway of that pasture, it stops. Where now these roads, streets go into these subdivisions, make winding.
I got you.
So it extends to 5 mile at that point from that person's home. It's not the driveway of the subdivision, but that's the driveway of their home.
Right.
How the insurance is
It
rated.
created a longer distance.
It created further distance.
I
So
got you.
unfortunately, it created issues for their the amount of insurance premium they would be paying. So this actually is a benefit for the citizens by putting them all in the same insurance district as well as the same fire protection district, and have one tax rating and one insurance rating.
Right. Good.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
did y'all
To the left,
do a review, and do we have this problem anywhere else in the county?
We are constantly reviewing these maps on a monthly basis. GIS works with us very well. And whenever a new subdivision has been approved and the plat has been recorded, that's when GIS gets the maps and starts updating their stuff. They then notify our office that this could be an issue. We start looking at it and go from there. This one was just the biggest one we've had to date because it was it wasn't like it was next door to a district line. It was actually separate of it, and it's all started when a fire station was added several years ago, but the district lines weren't looked at. So one thing we were working on is to try to develop a policy to present to the board for approval in the future that will help alleviate some of these things and set a standard across the board.
So as each new subdivision is recorded, you become aware of it, and at that time y'all see what district it's in and see if we have any of these problems.
That's right. So the idea, if it splits a district, we try to put it to the closest one there is, and we always communicate with the chiefs, let them know this is what's going on and this is what we're finding. And but this was just a much larger scope because of the amount of area it was covering. But we do foresee this continuing to happen throughout the county, and we hope by putting a policy in place that will help alleviate some of the issues we've had trying to work this thing out. But at the end, all the chiefs work together and do what's best for the citizens.
Thank you.
Adam, thank you. This hasn't been as easy of a task as one might assume. So I think it's been, we were meeting in the courthouse during COVID when all this came about. And so, I guess I saw you more than probably I really wanted to during these 2 years. But I want to thank all of you because this was a joint project with everybody, even Brett, 911, everybody was on board. So I think in addition to what you said, the response time is going to be a little bit different now that we do that. So I think the way to sum it up, I think we did the right thing to make sure that the citizens are served in a fair manner. And I know you and I have talked about exactly what Commissioner Braswell said, that we're going to have to take a look at this. And also we have to take a look when fire departments want to expand to another location as far as a additional fire station. So we're going to have to look at that also because it may affect district lines also.
Yes,
so
sir.
Thank you and Kevin and all your crew for what you did.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
I had one other question, but I think I've solved it myself. The difference between the current total revenue and the proposed revenue, I guess that's because some property's moving into a different tax rate.
Yes, sir. So when you look at the 3 districts that's being affected by it, 2 had the same insurance rating, and 2 had the same tax rating. A third one had a 1 grade higher, a 4 in the insurance rating, and a 2 cent higher in the tax rating. So it was 2 districts being moved into 1, which some of the other district was actually in a lower tax rate. So there's actually some savings there to some of those citizens as well. But there's no increase in cost to any citizens.
Mr. Chairman, I just want
Yes,
to
sir.
tack on to what Commissioner Braswell was saying. The other group is that I've always been appreciative of is the fire chief's willingness to come together and do really what's in the best interest of the people. And that's so important. And I really appreciate in this situation, your staff working along with them, but ultimately them coming together and their boards and their personnel to really just say what's better for the people, and then that's what we're going to do. And so it always comes through, and we appreciate you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. There's a lot of growing pains, and we're very, fire service, like EMS and law enforcement and 911, we're very prideful people, and which we should be because we're servants. But they have all come together in to do what's right. So.
Any other comments from the board? I would just echo that, I guess the spirit of collaboration amongst all the groups already mentioned, particularly the chiefs and the departments, and even, as they mentioned, the board members who've been involved in discussions over, quite some time. But the bottom line was, I think everyone was looking at what was best for the citizens of this area, and going forward to being the county as a whole. So thank everyone for keeping the citizens in mind. And if there's not any other questions, I did want to acknowledge, we did have an email from Jill Parker, who was probably the one who brought this to our attention to start with, and was a very persistent and frequent gave us reminders to make sure we address this issue. I will want to say in her email, it's very complimentary of the folks involved, particularly the fire departments, in getting this issue resolved. So I did want to acknowledge Ms. Parker's email. So.
And I would also like to add that just because we're moving from one district to the other does not make one fire department better than the other. They're all equally the same, providing the level of service. It's just it happened to be one was actually a little closer end of the day for the citizens. But they all do outstanding jobs.
Yes.
I do have one other
Okay.
question. The boundaries, fire district boundaries, are they fluid? I mean, do we have to take action when they're changed?
Only when there's significant changes. If it's a what we call a maintenance change, such as it's on one, the change is needed because of a subdivision and it's right next to each other, that does not require because it's a maintenance change. Versus this was a significant change because we had to incorporate lots of other parcels into it in order to get to that one subdivision. So that's why we had to bring it here. Our last revision was in 2017, I believe it was. So we're constantly monitoring the fire district lines, and it's coming up a time again to take a closer look at it, especially with the fire departments who are planning, who are needing to plan additional fire stations in the future. That's going to come also bring that into light as well. So we will constantly monitor those.
When a new fire station is planned, it gets its own individual district by redistricting and taking portions of other districts.
Typically, that's how it worked. In the past, that's not worked that way. But that's what's caused some of our issues like with this.
Right.
So that's one thing we're working on, and hopefully work with the chiefs and the board is present a policy where we can help alleviate that and manage it in a much better form.
Thank you. I think y'all do a wonderful job.
Thank you.
All right. If there's no other questions from the board, any comments from anyone in the audience before I close the public hearing? All right, this time I'll close the public hearing and I'll turn it over to the board. I think we have 2 resolutions to look at relocating the lines. Do I hear a motion to adopt those?
I move we adopt the resolutions, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6 on the agenda is the Health Department approval of fiscal year 22-23 fee schedules. And I believe Mr. Steve Strickland is here to address those for us.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, thank you for your time today.
Good morning.
Dr. Pearson's out of town. She sends her regrets. one of my duties at the health department is to look after the money, finances. And some of you know that very well.
We thank you for doing that.
Yes, sir. The Division of Public Health and State requires health departments to have their fees approved by the Board of Health, which we did a little more than 2 weeks ago, and county commissioners on an annual basis. I'm here today to present to you each division's fees: preventive health, behavioral health, and environmental health. Now, the preventive health and behavioral health, we've got several hundred services there, and I don't really want to go into detail of those, but I can assure you that a committee from each division has looked at these fees. And for preventive health and behavioral health, what we do there is we look at our reimbursement rates for Medicaid, Medicare, private insurance, and we go to the nearest dollar above that to get reimbursed. So that's how we come up with the fees that are set there. Now, if someone does not have Medicaid, Medicare, private insurance, we also work off a sliding fee scale based on a person's income, and we verify their income. We require documentation for that, so we look at the income and we slide the cost of that service for each of those persons, those folks coming in without insurance from Medicaid, Medicare. So if you will allow me to state that that's the work we've done for those two divisions, we'll move on to the environmental health. Any questions on those two divisions? Okay,
Any questions?
great. Thank you, sir. So the next set of fees is the environmental health, and we've discussed in some detail about this recently. We are requesting to have 8 different fees increased in environmental health. And to give you some history, back in 2017, we come to you for the first time in like 12 years, but we had not increased fees. So we had a pretty big jump back in 2017. So each year we've come before you to incrementally increase these fees, with the exception of last year. We had no increase. This year we're recommending 8, and I'm going to go through each one of those. The first one is reinspection of pools from $50 to $75. We had 25 of those this past year. Next is septic system design. That's the largest number of services we provide in the fees I'm presenting to you at $2,056 for the last 12 months. We're moving from $425 to $475, a $50 increase. And let me stop and say that we also provided to you a comparison of 9 other counties that were color-coded, showing you where those 9 counties stand compared to these fees. Okay. Moving on, setter tank replacement upgrade, 125 to 175, a $50 increase. We had 266 of those last 12 months. Setter tank reinspection, 75 to 100, $25 increase. Mobile homes, 75 to 100, $25 increase. Large system design, 500 to 550. We did 46 of those in the last 12 months. Then the last 2 is the wells, a well permit for private wells from 300 to 350, a $50 increase in well permit, ag, irrigation, 225 to 275, a $50 increase for 21 of those last year. Now, with the numbers I presented to you, if we put that in the budget, we're looking at increasing the revenue by $132,425 next year. Any questions on these increases?
Commissioner Brazel?
Yes, in talking with a lot of our builders and developers and homeowners all together, the 475, I think, for the septic tank,
Yes, sir.
I feel like that's really a low number because we've been running 16 weeks behind from what I understand. I know that's a personnel issue, but I think from a standpoint of keeping that department staffed properly and making sure that there's ample funds, it should be the services should more compensate for the costs, since I think we just gave a substantial increase to those people. I would advocate, in talking with the people it actually affects most, I would advocate something in the neighborhood of $750, but that's entirely my point of view, and I'm only one of 7, so I just wanted to get my point out there.
And I can add to that, that looking at the range, Sampson County is 250, Harnett County is $750. They've been at $750 for 7-8 years at least, minimum. Wake County is at $400.
Yeah.
And we communicated with them just to confirm that rate. They did say that they plan to increase that fee for next year, next fiscal year. But also let me just add that the fees that we charge hasn't in the past had a correlation between the response time. Okay, that's two different issues where the response time is various factors affect that.
That's personnel problem.
And training, and the health directors across the state are looking at that, trying to increase the number of trainings that they provide for new people. Go from 3 to 4 trainings per year. Trying to get the folks coming out of universities a little more equipped, so that when they come to this job, they're more readily able to assist us. But still stating, a new employee, it will take us approximately 2 years to get them up to speed where they need to be. But I will add that the salary increase we just saw will
Yeah.
go a long ways to helping us
Yeah.
reduce that response time. No question there.
Steve, how many of those permits have we issued in the last year?
56.
2,056.
2,056.
Yes, sir.
So Commissioner Brazel's proposed rate going to 7, that's about, at least my math, which was on the spot, on my calculator, was about $670,000 if we went up. Does that sound
Now, 325, an increase of $325 times 2,000.
2,000? Yeah.
I'm hoping that salary increase will alleviate that delay time, but I'm satisfied with the rates as proposed by the health department.
And I will tell you, I was at a meeting this past week where I shared with some neighboring health directors what we were looking at doing here and what we had done for our staff, and they responded, we can't compete with that at this point in time. But we're seeing that across the state.
Steve, I know you handle the money well over there.
Yes.
You're the tightest man I ever met. But anyway, I only got one question, and I want. Huh? What?
Rick Hester might compete with me.
No, I was going to say we might have one up here that might. I'm not going to call any names. Yeah. He smiles. He'd be, yeah.
But I was concerned on the board or your thinking was on the mobile food units where it's $250, and I was looking at that down. Why, if you look at the same thing that you're charging the restaurants, you're charging to the mobile food units, is that?
In terms of what we're charging the restaurants, that fee is established by the state.
Yeah.
And we have no control of what.
So that $250 is always.
Now, for the mobile food units, that's a different story. We can adjust that.
No, I'm not asking you to adjust it. I just wondered what your thinking was on. Is that the way in previous years? It's the same thing.
Yes, sir. We did bump that up a few years back because what we were seeing was that our fee was so low that you can be inspected in Johnston County and work in Wake County or Transylvania County, as long as you're inspected in one county. So if our fee was so low, they'd all come here to be inspected. So we bumped that fee up to ensure that we had it's equitable to other counties.
Is it fair to say that they have to spend also on the weekend times the
Yes, sir.
inspection? Is it fair to say that that happens a lot?
It has happened a lot. And I will add that in the last few years, we have allowed staff to work overtime in schools to make up for some of that response time that we have. But yes, sir, those folks make comp time, and they do a lot of inspecting of those food units at the events that we have in the county.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
my comment was made because I've researched. I think it's Mecklenburg County that has almost $1,500. So it's all over the board. I'm thinking that we want to make sure that we make these departments as cost effective as we can as far as our budget effect. And that's solely my reason for that. I've talked with numerous people regarding that, and there didn't seem to be any pushback. But here again, I'm just bringing that up for consideration. It's not
I think the pushback would come from individual citizens. That's what I was thinking about.
You're correct.
But you've been individual citizens, don't use it.
Any other comments from any?
My only comment would be, and I know we've said they kind of correlate, but one doesn't necessarily affect the other. My only concern, I'm good with what has been recommended. I don't know that I'd make it any higher, and mainly just because of the personnel issues. So many builders are now having to go get private guys, so they're paying additional fees that they were not paying, in my opinion, before when the county was able to do everything. And so I think, once we get the personnel issue fixed, that may be something we come back to.
Commissioner Stevens, you make an excellent point, because when they pay those private folks to go do that work, they still have to pay for this fee
Right.
on top of that to get that permit.
And some of those guys were paying up to $3,000.
Yes,
I think
sir.
that's why they
right.
said raise our fees up if you need to.
And for the individual homeowner, that's a big.
And most of the time, it's not the homeowners that's still getting the permit, it's the person that's
Correct.
building the
Correct.
house.
Yeah, I would just comment, I know this is not necessarily an enterprise fund, but for me, I think the salary adjustment based on the market conditions is appropriate, but I'm not sure with what we're seeing now and with our situation with wastewater that we're going to see that slow down. So that's why I would agree with the 750. It may help us get more people in the long run, and I'll say, yes, this is self-sustaining where we have additional funds to help get extra people, because what we've got is a backlog now. We're going to be burning out our people that are working, and they're going to be working hard for a long time trying to get that number down. And it said other folks are paying $3,000. We've got Harnett County, which is seeing similar situations, already charging $750. I'm kind of supporting the $750 range for the reason that if we need to hire additional folks, we have the revenues that can really come from a quasi-enterprise fund.
And I can tell you, in terms of the revenues, how they support this department. County tax office pays 52.77% of this department. Fees is at 46%. But please note that food and lodging is 35% of the staff, plus administrative. And you've got the soils.
Did I not hear correct? You said it takes about 2 years to bring these guys up to par also.
If they come in without credentials, yes, sir. A training, yes, sir. And we have seen recently, but we had 3 leave within several months to go take care of ourselves.
Interesting thing about that is too, is that there's a cost to the county of about $24,000 per employee just to get them ready to go out into the field. And so one of the thoughts in the pay study was to eliminate that turnover and be able to retain those employees rather than we make that investment in not only paying those people, but also that training cost, and then they go somewhere else and go take the fruits of our labor and capitalize somewhere else. So I think you're going to see some long-term cost savings as a result of the action that we just did. And so as for the 750, I would be supportive of that, just because it's.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Smith, yes, sir.
Dickie, let me first say I hear you, and I support why you feel the way you do. I'm always concerned about the cost of housing, and the biggest impact on the cost of housing today is government regulation and government cost. And so if I thought raising this fee would help solve the problem that you accurately described, I would be for that. But I believe that the pay raises that we just gave, I think we need to let and see if that doesn't solve the problem without putting additional cost on people to buy a home, because they're struggling to pay the cost of buying a home today. We have a situation where in one of our planning departments, the fees, we charging so many fees that we can't use all of it, and we've got a big balance. I don't know how much, Chad? $2.5 million that we're charging the homeowners that we're not paying employees to do that job, and that money just sits on our bank account, sits in our bank account, and makes a home more cost effective for young people who want to buy a home. And so I agree with you. I want to solve the problem. I just think we ought to give the pay raises a chance first before we put it on the back of new homeowners.
I think that makes sense. I did want to maybe ask for a clarification over here, but I believe the situation we just described in building inspections is a state mandated restriction, not something that we're doing. Okay, I just wanted.
But they
Same effect.
may be restricted. The facts are still the same.
absolutely.
That fee is charged, and that fee is figured into the price of a house. And when a fee gets, just so you know, when a fee gets figured into the price of a house, and let's just say the fee is $1,000. It does not raise the price of the house $1,000. There are add-ons, commissions, that real estate commissions, lawyers' fees, other fees that add on, and that $1,000 can end up being $1,250 or $1,300 by the time it gets done. And those things just keep adding on and make housing unaffordable. And I just hate to see us with that. First off, I wish there was some way we could find a way to use that $2.5 million to provide services, because that's what it's for, is to provide services. And when we're not providing services to people, we're in the wrong place. And just to have money sitting on in the bank account is not a good thing. And I feel like that, I probably said enough, but I feel like we need to see if the salary situation doesn't solve our problem before we saddle the homeowners.
I think you and Commissioner Stevens have convinced me I probably need to have a little more patience on that.
Yeah, so, it was just thrown out there, so to give us some time to even.
Yeah, I think
I
that makes
appreciate
sense.
it. You probably brought up a good point, but we got plenty of time to adjust
Well,
that.
and the medium cost, Commissioner Harris and I were talking last week, and I think the medium home price in Johnston County is up almost $200,000 in the last 5-6 years, and it's gotten further and further out of the reach of young people trying to buy a first-time home. So I understand the argument, and I'm okay. Like I said, I wanted to put it out there.
All right. Any other discussion? All right, I hear a motion to, Ms. Strickland, thank you.
Make a motion that we accept the proposed fee changes as presented by the Board of Health's recommendation and Mr. Strickland.
Second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you, sir.
Fee schedule is approved.
Thank you
Mr.
for your
Strickland.
time.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, item number 7 on the agenda is a resolution for proposed 2022 general obligation school bond referendum. And I believe Ms. Laster is going to come forward and present that to us.
You have in your packets actually 2 resolutions that initiate the referendum process for the school bonds. The first gives staff the okay to proceed and file an application with the North Carolina Local Government Commission. It authorizes a publication of the notice that we intend to apply to the LGC, which is required under the statutes, and makes certain findings about our financial and debt management, and states that we don't anticipate a tax increase to repay the school bonds. The second resolution is one that we typically have you consider at this point in the process that will allow us to reimburse expenditures related to the school bonds that are made prior to the sale of the bonds if we choose to. And of course, before you consider the resolutions, we need to establish a maximum amount for the school bonds.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Laster? I would like to say based on the last communication we had and the discussions with the LGC last week, I think last Wednesday, we had talked about a maximum of up to $177 million, and those projects, as last communicated from the school, were a high school, one high school, $103 million, an elementary school, and I can't remember exactly where that was. Anybody help me with that?
Swift Creek area.
Swift Creek, for $48 million, a Cooper Academy addition at $17 million, a facility in Princeton for $2 million, turf fields at 6, and ADA access improvements for $1 million, which totaled $177 million. And the schools were looking at using $8.5 million from their fund balance to make up the difference on some 2018 bond projects. So that was where the $177 million came from. And with that, I will open it up for discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Smith.
I think if I'm right, I believe the presentation to the local board was, it'd be between 150 and 177. There wasn't just one number given.
It was a maximum of 177,
Okay.
but there was
It was
different.
up to, yeah.
Different,
All right.
yeah.
I think it's a very important issue for us as commissioners. And let me just say, in the private business world, the free market determines how money and capital is spent. Private businesses determine what they're going to charge for their goods and services. Customers decide whether they're going to pay it or not pay it, and they have the option to walk away if the price is not good, and the market sets the price. We, as commissioners, are faced with the fact that government sets the price that the customer, the taxpayer, has to pay. The taxpayer doesn't have any choice about whether to pay or not pay. And so if government overcharges, the taxpayer doesn't have any way to not pay it, except the taxpayers elect us. And we are the person or group that determines what is fair and what is correct for government to charge the taxpayers. And that is our job. Our job is to represent both government and the taxpayer, because we are the only entity that can represent fairly the taxpayer. The taxpayer is not like a customer. The taxpayer doesn't have any choice other than depend upon us to make sure that we only charge the revenue that is needed for our county. I support the school system. 22 years ago, when this county begun to build schools, I believe I made the motion to start that and was a champion for building schools. And I still want to support the school system, but I also want to support the taxpayer. And I want to make sure that we use the taxpayers' funds for the best possible way. And our job as commissioners is to determine that need. And that the way we should do that is not based on opinion. It's not. What we should do is that decision needs to be based on credible facts. And we need to let the credible facts inform our opinion. I know it sounds good to say, let's just, whatever school board wants, we'll fund it. I know that sounds good. But let's look at some of the facts that that we have to deal with. And these facts I got from the report that ORD gave to the school board in February 8th of 22. And let's look at capacity. Now, when we look at the capacity of our schools, we are under capacity. When you look at the ones, for instance, there's a lot of talk about let me get my, yeah, here we go. That the, and this does not include mobile classrooms. We have 186 mobile classrooms out there. And so I'm not even including those in these facts. If our elementary school, our design capacity is 16,802 students. And based upon this report, which came out of the ORED that was given to us on February 8th, they only have 16,234 students, or over capacity of 568. And then in 22, 23, they're still over capacity, and then only in 23 or 24 does it start to reach a deficit. Our middle school, we have a capacity of 8,836. And
Commissioner Smith, that first number, was that high school?
no, that was
Okay,
elementary school.
Elementary, okay, all right, just want to make sure.
So that was, so then the middle schools, we have a design capacity of 8,836, and we're using, at this time, 7,922, or we have 914, quote, empty seats. And for 22, 23, it's 7,980 or 800. And going all the way out to 25, we still have an overcapacity in our middle schools. Our high schools, the design for high schools is 11,313. Now, our high schools have a deficit, have more students than the design capacity. So the issue there that we need to decide is whether the high schools, because students only go for part of a day, as to whether the school board is making good use of our high schools. Because high schools are not just buildings, they're athletic fields, they're gymnasiums, there are many other costs that get added to that. So I think from a capacity standpoint, we have some room. There's been discussion about where there's overcrowding, or a school is at capacity. And the numbers I've seen do not match the numbers in the ORED report. For our elementary schools, we are at capacity on 10 schools. We are under capacity on 14 schools. For our middle schools, we're at capacity on 3 schools. We're under capacity on 8 schools. For our high schools, we're at capacity on 3 schools, and we're under capacity on 5 schools. So when you add that up, schools that are at capacity is 16. Schools that are not at capacity is 27. So we have 27 schools that are not at capacity today. So that deals with our capacity issue. So let's talk about the second fact we need to look at, and that's, again, not including the mobile classrooms. So let's look at growth, student growth. That also comes from this chart, which is in the ORD package. And that student growth, in 2017, we had 34,224 students. In 2021, we had 35,148, or an increase in 5 years of 924 students. So that's a 2.7% increase in students, and I'm talking about in the brick and mortar buildings. I'm not talking about the virtual buildings, okay, or virtual schools. And so, and during that period of time, we've increased funding from $62 million to $78 million for operational costs. And so, that gets to, again, if you look at a 6-year time from 2016 to 2021, that's a 6-year period, we've increased, according to this chart, which is a little, there's more students in here than in the other figures, so the same report has different numbers. So if I'm giving you different numbers, it's because the report had different numbers. In 6 years, we've increased 2,830 students, or 471 new students per year for 6 years. That's a lot, and that's a period of time when we were the fastest growing county in the state. If you want to look at the last 4 years, from 2018 to 2022, we've only increased 1,156 students, or 289 new students per year. That's facts. That's not my opinion. That's facts that came from the school board. And so what the ORD does is it goes and looks at all the developments that are potentially on the book, and it extrapolates how many new students are going to be in the schools. And then the school board takes that and comes and says to the commissioners, you need to fund this. You need to get the taxpayer to fund the potential new students based on the developments that are going to be built. But they don't, that's an opinion, or that's a projection. What we need to do is look at the facts, what's happened. And what's happened in the past 4 to 6 years does not match the projections that the school board is presenting to us. And we can look at the growth in students. And you say, well, why is that? If the people are moving here, and the answer is people have choices. They have a choice of 4 different schools to send their student, whether it be the performance of the school or whether it be other things. People are making choices. We have 2 public schools. We have government schools and we have charter schools. We have 2 new charter schools being built in this county this year. People are choosing to send more students to charter schools. We also have private schools, and people are choosing to send students to private schools. And what's really been exploding is homeschooling. The number of homeschooling that are students that are being schooled at home has increased tremendously. And we can get into some political reasons about why people are sending students, whether it be performance of the school or what's taught, but I don't want to get into that. I'm just saying, just because homes are being built doesn't mean students are going to go to the government schools. So I think we need to look at what the facts are. You know, it was in addition to that, and I'm in favor of a $150,000 school bond. That's what I'm in favor of. That's what will vote for. And I think we need 2 middle schools, which are about around $95 million, give or take. And then that leaves $50 million, give or take, to do things across the county which will help people support the school bond because they see something being done at their school and in their community, and therefore they will vote for the bond. And Mr. Thomas Dudley, who gave the report for ORAD to the school board in February, had this to say. He said, in terms of sheer numbers, the need for new schools is greatest at the elementary level. They're not my words. They're the words of the person who was hired to do the study. He says, in terms of sheer numbers, the needs for the new schools is greatest at the elementary level. You have growth in most places in the district at the elementary school level, Dudley said, according to the article by Mr. Scott Bojack in the Johnstonian News. So I believe that supports the need for elementary schools, 2 elementary schools. I'm all for that, feel like we need to fund it, feel like we need to do it. I know there's a feeling for high schools, but let's listen to what Mr. Dudley said about high schools. He says, Dudley expects the need for a new high school to reach critical mass by 2027. They're not my words, they're Mr. Dudley's words. And I believe that we need to build a high school. I just believe we need to build it with a bond issue in 2024, when I think it will be needed. And then we can complete that school in 25, 26, which will be well before the 27 that Mr. Dudley said that high school would be needed. So we can meet the needs of the elementary schools, the 2 elementary schools that need to be built today. We can give $50 million to be spread out across the county to do other things, and we can build a high school in 2025. I believe that that is what needs to be done. I believe the facts and the statistics in the past support that. And in addition to that, not only do I believe that's more credible than the resolution we got from the school board, let's talk about the school board's representations to us and whether they're factual or not factual. Let's talk about the fund balance. In the past, and we've asked the school board what they're going to be needing with our budget, which we're just going to be passing in the next couple of months, but we've gotten back crickets. And what the operating cost is affects the ability to pay for a school bond. In the past 3 years, we have funded $36 million in operating money, more than has been needed to operate the schools in this county. $36 million. At the end of fiscal year 20, the school board had said it was going to cost $71 million. It cost $63, so there was a fund balance of $8 million. In 2021, they said it was going to cost $72 million. It cost $58 million. So there was an excess of $13 million, which increased the fund balance to $23 million. And in 2022, they said it was going to cost just under $80 million. The best projections that I can get from people who I have confidence in is that they will spend $65 million. That will leave $15 million. And what that's going to leave is a fund balance of $36 million. That's what they represented to us. It was needed. It was not used. In addition to that $36 million, the school board has ARPA funds, which it's very loose as to what they can use those funds for. So and they have on hand now $103 million, let's just say $100 million. So the school board has $100 million in ARPA funds, has $36 million in fund balance, which we have funded for them. And because of those things, and because of the needs of this county, and because of us being good stewards of the taxpayers' money, I recommend that we pass a bond, and I will vote for passing a bond for $150 million this year. I think in '24, we can, and our figures, I think, have shown that we can, at that time, build a high school and meet some other needs, and in '26, we can meet other needs. We can meet the school's needs. I just think that the $177 million, the facts don't support that.
All right, any other comments? Commissioner Braswell?
I do, in all due respect to Commissioner Smith, and I do appreciate the figures that he gave, but also I'd like to give you some facts. All right, there is a fact that we have 186 mobile units as he related to. This bond will, if we pass it, the resolution, it will get 95 kids or students out of mobile classrooms. There's a fact that we have approved multiple subdivisions. There will be more approved in the next 2 years. It'll be 2 years, a fact. It'll be 2 years before a school would ever open its doors. So we're going to have 2 more years of us approving subdivisions with kids in, and then we're just going to keep stacking up the need. Fact, the latest high school costs $45 million over at Corinth and over at Cleveland. Now, projections on that has doubled since that school was built. How much is it going to be 2 years from now? Fact, if you do not build these schools, you're going to have to bus students somewhere. By Mr. Smith's own admission, the high schools are overcrowded. The high schools are in the category in which he said. Fact, no new high school has been built in my district, in Commissioner Braswell's district, in Commissioner Godwin's district, since 1965. And so this new high school proposed at Wilson Mills will have an opportunity for kids over here to relieve some of the overcrowding, but also give them an opportunity. The high school in my district, Triple S, is 1965. Bordering me, South Johnston, same year, 1966, 67. North Johnston, same thing, 1965. So I don't see any need to prolong a high school 2 years down the road that's going to cost more and not eliminate some of the students. You know, I don't know what you mean by government schools. I think they're public schools. I think they run pretty effectively. I think the PTAs and PTOs, Boosters Club, School Advisory will differ. They're not all run by government. It takes a lot of volunteers and a lot of people. Now, and finally, I think we have a decision to make. And at the end of the day, fact is that the people are going to vote and pass on this bond. They're going to determine whether we submitted a bond. And I believe that we send a mixed message to the voters if we're not in tune with what we want to do or what we need to do. The truth of the matter is I wanted more. And I was somewhere around what I had misunderstood probably, but I thought I had heard that some of you were in favor of a $200 million bond when we first got here. And maybe I misunderstood that. I heard it, but I misunderstood what it meant. But we've got to send a message out there, because if this bond does not pass, we don't need to worry about our land use plan, because we're going to have to go back to 2002 and when we just quit doing anything. So we got a decision to make. Are we going to provide the support that some of us created by all these subdivisions and more to come? And are we going to say, okay, we understand that, but we also understand these kids need to go to school somewhere. And every child deserves a classroom to sit in, not a mobile unit out there. So 95 of them, if we pass this bond, will be gone. I'm also understanding from the Board of Education that I was concerned for what might happen on Benson. It was on one of the original reports that we saw for the need for addition to Benson. I understand that they said that they're going to commit $16 million to do Benson. I don't know that. I don't have any record of that. But the only thing I can say is I was very, very concerned. I was also very, very concerned about Glendale Kinley, that something is done there. So these are small schools. So it's not a matter of where the needs are there. And I agree with Commissioner Smith that it's our obligation and it is our duty to make sure that one of the things that we can actually spend money on is for education. Now, I don't see anywhere in here where it's going to cost the taxpayer 1 penny more. Nowhere. Because I think, if I remember my correction, if it is going to be on a tax increase, we have to state that at the time that we issued the bond. But I think we got to support this bond. If it doesn't happen, and I don't know, it'll set us back 10 years. I think we've done a good job so far. I think we've done a good job providing it. But if we are going to continue to be the fastest growing county, and I noticed you didn't put year 2021, 2022 enrollment. Did you give me that figure? I don't think.
I did.
37,000?
I did. If you take 37,000 and from the I'll give you the facts. I gave it to you two ways. If you take 37,462 and you go back to 2016 when we had 34,000, I'm giving you facts.
Okay,
let
but
me finish. Let me finish.
Okay.
34,632, that's when I said there was an increase of 471 pupils per year. And I said in the past 4 years, if you go from 36,306 in 2018, 2019 to 37,462 in 21, 22, that's an increase of 1,156 divided by 4 gives you an increase of 289 students per year. And so let me also add, Commissioner Bradswell, so you understand that there are two types of public schools. There are two types of public schools.
I understand that.
There are schools run by the government, and there are schools run by charters. And so that's all I was saying is that's the way it is. There are government schools run by the government that the government pays for and the government runs, and there are charter schools, which are public schools. And so I was just trying to differentiate between government schools and charter schools. Nothing derogatory about that.
Okay, I didn't say it, I didn't mean it that way, but what I'm saying is, but government also supports charter schools too.
I said that. That's why they're called public. That's right. That's their public schools. That's what I was trying to make.
So
they are public schools, and you have to differentiate between public schools that are government run and government schools that are charter run. And then you have private schools, and then you have home schools. There are 4 different choices that parents have.
Yeah, I don't understand that because I think I'm the only one sitting up here that has a child in public school, other than Commissioner Bradswell.
The Bradswells seem to have.
The Bradswell has, yeah. And, but here and there, even with what the increase is, and all of you seen the maps that Commissioner Stevens requested and see where the subdivisions are approved and everything. And so I'm just simply saying, if we are going to continue in which I'm all for, the growth, but also we got to continue providing education places for school. And that's all I got to say. You know, so you guys can vote your conscience and you can do however. I'm not going to be upset with anyone that votes either way. I'm just simply saying that we need, and I'll take a quote from what you said earlier, and I think it was pretty good, if I can use your quote, and I'll say if we don't provide schools, we are in the wrong place.
The only thing that I would say, Commissioner Braswell, is there is no correlation. There is no correlation between the growth in Johnston County in the past 4 years and the number of new students. There's just no correlation there. The facts don't support that. And you can't say they do. I'm talking facts, not opinion. If you look at the correlated growth, the correlation between the growth and the yield of students that we have to go to our public schools, they don't correlate. People are choosing other ways to educate their children. And all I'm saying is, and I'm not against for building schools, I just want to build what the ORED person said, that the main thing we need now is elementary schools. And then as staff has told us, you know, we've offered to the school board to go out. They don't even have any sites. And we've offered for them to go out and find some sites that can go ahead and be finding a high school site and get it ready so that we'll be ready to go in '24. So I just think we need to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money.
Commissioner, I just have
Commissioner Stevens.
a little bit more of opinions than facts than you have, being newer. This was one of the big issues when I applied to be on the board that was very important to me, is I felt like there was not enough transparency and communication with regards to what planning is doing, what the Board of Education is doing, and what the commissioner is doing. So I had a few points. One of the things I liked about this number was that it was an up to number. It wasn't a you know, there was still some discussion there on how some of the funds could also be used. Like Mr. Bryce was talking about another project in Benson. One thing to note, I was at an event last week where they spoke of that Johnston County is the only, well, one of 3 counties, I believe, in the state that has not lost students due to COVID. So although I do, you know, understand what you're saying and agree with, I don't like having some schools that aren't at capacity or have empty chairs and we're building more. I do think it's important to look where the growth is, and that may be needed. You know, one of the things, I wasn't here for the ORED report. Again, I have been studying through all the documentation in the past couple of weeks. But one thing I feel like we as a county have been doing has been playing catch up in a lot of ways for several years. And so, again, to Mr. Braswell's point, I worry now by the time we vote on this, get this done, the schools get built, with just the amount of lots that are approved right now in the county, are we already going to be behind? So that's a big concern I had, but one of the things you mentioned I agree with is making sure that the Board of Education is using these funds wisely, and I have asked for additional transparency with regards to the building designs and where they're going, and, you know, making sure that we don't have half-empty schools most of the day. So I think there's a lot more discussion that we can have as a board with the Board of Education to make sure that these funds are used very wisely moving forward.
All right, any discussion on this side of the table over here? So I did want to point out, Commissioner Smith had mentioned land acquisition, and the land acquisition for the schools that I referenced is in the $177 million. And as far as design, I know that when I came on the board in 2018, one of the concerns that I think this whole board is we can't continue to use the models for the schools that we've had, the sprawling elementary, middle, and even the high schools is a thing, you know, is a thing of the past. And I know from conversations, again, you know, nothing in writing, and to your point, we've got to make sure we do this, is, you know, we need to build up. We need to, I was just in Wake County at a ball tournament this week. They have 2 schools and a park all on one site. So looking at you know, combining those things, and those are things I've heard, particularly the facilities manager and other board members to realize that, this is not the 1990s, 2000s, or even the 2010s, that we've got to change our approach because land is getting more expensive. So I just wanted to clarify those 2 points on the prices, where the land costs were for this bond, and also some of the things that Commissioner Stevens had is I believe that the school system is on board with making some of those type changes that you were referencing. Commissioner Godwin.
I see a lot of merit in what everybody has said. The problem I have with the school system in the past has been not building schools in an efficient way. I went to school, and I know this Commissioner Brazil went to school in a 3-story school. 12 grades and probably 15 acres of land. It's a different time, I understand that. But when we start changing colors of bricks throughout, bricks versus block, if you look at some of the nice fire stations we have in the county, they're steel with block and metal. I don't understand why schools can't be built a lot cheaper than what it would cost a hospital, for example. And that's what we're doing per foot, hospital costs. When I look at $103 million for high school, I don't think it needs to be that. I don't have any problem. I tend to agree with Commissioner Brazel. We need to build the schools and have them available. But I think we can do it cheaper. I think the school board should be doing it cheaper. So I'm going to support the getting the buildings built. I just wish we could coordinate with the school board and get them built cheaper.
I think that the larger campuses bring on a problem we've not even thought about, and that is security for our students. The larger the campus, the harder it is to secure a campus. And I think we all are aware that the school in Cumberland County that exceeded its cost, but I think the high school ended up costing $98 million, which is much larger than what we're talking about building here. But I see from every side I've heard today, I see a lot of merit. We do need to build our school, and I think every student is entitled to a comfortable classroom, although we have a tendency to lean back on our experiences. But when we went to school in unair-conditioned schools, 3-story schools, and no fire protection, we didn't have air conditioning at home. Students didn't, it was a total different living environment for the students at the time. But I see merit in everybody's comments, but I don't want to kick the can down the road. Let's go ahead and get something happening.
Commissioner Harris, your turn.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. I think great points have been brought out by all the commissioners, and I appreciate those. One of the things that always troubles me is when we start pushing projects down 2, 3, 4, 5 years, is what is that cost going to look like? I know what the cost has gone up in the last 5 years. I think this board has been very clear with the school board that we're interested in thinking outside the box and perhaps building up versus out and not having these sprawling campuses. I think the students deserve a nice state-of-the-art facility to go to school and be educated in, but I do think that there's some room that can be improved upon so that we're not just building these massive schools that are not cost-effective at all, and security becomes a problem as well. I would be supportive of going ahead and doing as much as we can do to move this forward, because I do think that with the things that have already been approved and are already on the books, when we start talking about building a school today, it would be 2, 3, 4 years before you ever sit down in it. So it's a lot's going to happen in the next 3, 4 years. And so I would be supportive of moving forward with the bond as the chairman has proposed it, or read it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we agree to support a school bond of $150 million.
All right, we have a motion. Do I hear a second? Not hearing a second. The motion dies. So any other? I would say for me, and kind of wrapping up, I agree, Commissioner, with what's been said by everybody, and I'll take the numbers that Commissioner Smith presented at face value, with the caveat that Commissioner Stevens put in that our numbers may not match, but we're not going down. So when we're looking at in relation, and again, we're playing catch up. I mean, that was one of the things that when I ran in 2018, I think we were behind, and not only schools, we're talking about the county facilities as well, that we're behind. And I hate to kick the can down the road 2 more years, because it's going to be, I think Thanksgiving Elementary was the last one we built, and I believe that was about at least a 3-year process from the start of design. So if whatever we start on, it'll be next year before we can start by the time a bond passes. So it'll be 23, 4, 5 before we get anywhere with any of this stuff. And so I know the growth is coming. So I hate to again, be part of kicking the can down the road. So I would support the maximum amount that we've mentioned here. I do wish that we had more control. I mean, I think the school board has been listening. The facilities manager, the superintendent has been listening to what we've had to say. I think some things, and again, nothing is solid, but some co-location of middle and high schools, some use of the high school as a middle school to start with, are options that they're considering to get some of the capacity issues that Commissioner Smith brought up, making sure they're using them as much as they can. So that's my 2 cents on it. And is anyone, I hear any other motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to make a motion, but before I do, let me say that that we can afford to do this. I mean, we can afford it, the debt capacity we got. We can afford to do it. We can afford to do 200 million. We can afford it. And I know some of you want prepared to do a new government complex. And we'll fight that battle later. But I'm going on record to say that as long as we have kids on a mobile classroom, I'm not going to vote for building a new facility for county people to sit in when we can do another plan to solve it. So I just want everybody to know that, I can't support building something when we got other needs out there. So therefore, Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the resolutions for $177 million bond.
We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? I did want to add to Commissioner Smith's point that the operating costs are tied together. So as we're looking at this bond issue, and then from the models we've seen and presented to the LGC, the operating costs, have a tremendous impact on what our funding capacity is. So since we haven't seen a budget proposed yet, that needs to be a big part of what the school board brings to us, is something that is reasonable with that considered, that we have now looking at a potential $177 million bond, and operating costs, which have consistently been budgeted higher than they have come in, to make sure that those numbers are realistic looking forward for next year. So any other discussion before we call for the vote?
The only thing I want to mention is also when we're looking, and I think we understand, I think we have to look in regard to where the overcrowding is. Is it by area or is it by their school districts? I think that's one of the variables we have to look at. So I'm ready to call for a question.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of having a bond, hang on. A general obligation school bond referendum in the amount of $177 million. Please approve or make your motions. Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion carries 6-1. Thank you. I will say, for those who think that sometimes there's not transparency in government, I think you've seen, that at work here. So I compliment the board for expressing each one's opinion here, and we'll move on to the next issue. But for those who are maybe think things are happening in other places, I mean, you just saw it happen here live if you're watching, and later if you're watching later. Yes,
Point
sir.
of clarification, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Brazel's motion did include both resolutions.
Both
Yes.
Okay,
resolutions.
good.
Yes. All right, next up, we have something that probably go a little bit shorter. Ms. Andrews, you come up and present the delinquent tax collection report.
Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. If it doesn't go shorter, I don't know that I'm prepared to discuss it. But anyway, before you have the March collections report. As you can see, at the end of the calendar month of March, we had about 1.3 left to collect for the year. We were up 1/3% of where we were last year, percentage-wise of the total. I have not yet seen the numbers today to see where we ended up for the month of April, but I am encouraged, and needless to say, my staff is gearing up to finish the last 2 months of the year strong. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
I do have, Mr. Chairman, staffing. How are you on staffing?
Fortunately, I have been able to fill 5 vacancies that I had this year, some who resigned or retired over time. And we very fortunate that we made 5 good hires. Right now, we are okay. I will say we're probably a little low on our appraisal staff. They are overworked because of the booming building and economy that we have as far as the real estate market in this county. Everybody's a little nervous knowing that, as I mentioned last month, that we are getting ready to go forward with probably in January, hopefully having our appraisal firm on staff to be prepared to help us with the 2025 reval. But that is the one area that we probably are pretty tight on. But for right now, we're making it work.
Good.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. Next item is manager report and comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. Good morning.
Good morning.
I just have 2 or 3 things. One is, just to clarify too, that we work with the school system on previously with whatever the number is, we sell those bonds generally over 4 years, and we communicate that with the school system. So they're staggered in, it makes it more affordable to do it that way. So we work very closely with their staff on that. So, well, one thing I wanted to do was recognize our PIO team as they won some awards this weekend, and Adam and Ben, I don't know, Adam, if you want to.
I think they need to come around
Show 'em
so
what
the
we
public
got
can
here.
actually see them at work there, so they can see who they are, yeah.
Here we go. They won these awards this weekend in Greenville.
Ben, that's you too, if you can,
And
I don't know.
Ben, I don't know,
He's got a
I can
Come
run
on,
the,
come on.
I can run the headset.
We'll let them switch out next time, we'll let them switch out.
I can run the headset.
We'll let Adam be on
Don't you let-
camera, and then we'll switch out.
Don't you let him
Ben.
touch that.
Congratulations to these guys for an outstanding job, and I just want to recognize them.
Here, here.
All right, yeah, thank you.
Speech.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for the recognition, Mr. Chair and Board of Commissioners and Mr. Hester. We are pleased to have the recognition from our peers in communications and across the state of North Carolina. It's an organization that has some big counties and some big cities and municipalities in there, so we're really proud of that. And Ben's put in a lot of hard work on the videos we worked on together, but he's a great editor and does a really good job. So, and also kudos to the emergency services, the fire marshal office, because they, welcomed us in with open arms and our cameras, and that's not always something people want to do. And also the Veteran Services Department, they let us in and let us go around with them and observe everything they do. So it's nice to make sure the county knows the great people we have working here. So, yeah, thank you.
And what were the actual 2 awards?
So the first place one was in videography, and that was for the fire marshal video. And then the second place one was for special programming, and that was for the Veteran Services Office.
Okay.
So there were about 6 or 7 video categories, and we entered in 2 of them and got 2 awards. So it was pretty efficient. So that was good.
Well, don't step away, I'm sure the board has some comments.
I've got some comments, Mr. Chairman. I was one of those who was not in favor of expanding government and adding this department, the Public Information Office. But as Commissioner Stevens said, we need transparency, and if nothing else, this department has helped us in that regard. So I applaud you commissioners who saw the value in this, and I appreciate what you guys do.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to add also that I think it's just been an amazing transformation from a county government that really didn't have a formal program. We had a lot of good people doing work behind the scenes that were trying to keep up as best they could, but they all had other jobs and responsibilities. And to bring in this department in what, less than 24 months, your award-winning department, that is really fantastic, and we're so proud of you. And I think that you've assembled a great team, and we're glad to have you representing Johnston County. And the ultimate goal is to provide good quality, transparent information to our citizens, and I think we have really stepped up that game, and I know you'll continue to do that more as time goes on. So thank you for your work.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other comments?
I was just going to say that was another big thing that I was passionate about in my interview for county commissioner, was that there needed to be more public information put out there. Somebody who, was just a citizen a couple months ago to seeing it behind the scenes. I will say you guys have exceeded my expectations as far as your operation, how you handle everything, and I think you are doing fantastic. So
Thank you, Ms. Steve.
Right.
Yeah. From my previous time on the board, before the board, and then now my time on the board, I've learned to respect the talent you guys have. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just echo the same thing, the vision, when we came on and started talking about a PIO and that office. I had my expectations, but I will say that you two have exceeded my expectations. I do want to give kudos to Chris Johnston, former PIO, and still economic development. He didn't have time to submit stuff for awards, but I give him an award for working in the most difficult circumstances possible. So, Chris, thank you for your efforts prior to bringing professionals on board.
He was the pioneer of early broadcasting.
Yeah, he was. So, all right.
And Mr. Chairman, I hope you remember what you traded me for me to go with the PIO.
I don't remember any of that.
I do. I remember very, very clearly, very clearly. But
I talk about my wife and my hearing and talking and stuff that's in my head. I have a hard time remembering stuff too, so she'll vouch for that.
Thank y'all.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank y'all.
just call it decal.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Mr. McClamb's going to do a quick ERA update for y'all. Thank you.
Okay.
I think, speaking in terms of Adam and Ben, we wouldn't be able to do the things that we have done in the ERA program without them with social media, print media, radio spots, and things that they've done working with us to get the word out about the ERA program in City of BG.
I can get rid of this thing.
So last week, we sent out, I think, our last check for the ERA program, and so we've wrapped that up, and we're continuing to finalize. We've got some reporting to do, so we'll need to have that open. That portal will be open just for us to do reporting through September. But so far, so for the totals, we spent just under $10 million out to our citizens. We helped over 2,000 families in Johnston County that needed our help. Administrative costs cost us a little over $1 million, so it was about a 9-to-1 split, which I think was very good for. We had 9 times the return, so that was very good for what we had done. There was a little over $1 million left in the second ERA pot that we did not spend. Last time I was here, I told you about, I felt like there was a little bit of an uptick in some of the fraud that we maybe were seeing. Some people trying to get into some of that money, and I think we denied more cases over the last month than we have in the previous few months because of that. So that's why we didn't spend all of the money that we anticipated spending. But in any case, almost $10 million is what we end up doing. And so that program has now ended. We have still got the CDBG program, which is mortgage assistance. We've spent almost $600,000 of the $900,000 available for that, and that continues. And we're still taking applications for that and continuing to monitor that. And when that is over with, we'll be done with that as well. But I think they have pushed that back a year, so it's actually available through September of 2023 or until the money runs out. So we'll monitor that. If we see a need to end that program early, we will do that as well. So it just depends on how much we're sending out, type of cases we're seeing, and then staff time. So that's my report for today. I appreciate everything. I appreciate your support in doing this. You guys have really helped out a tremendous amount with citizens of Johnston County for the last 2 years, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I just want to say one more thing before. DSS, could not have done it without DSS. Martha, that was in here for reporting purposes, Christy and Sarah upstairs in the auditor's office, and I've already mentioned Ben and Adam with what they've done for us getting the word out. So without those people, would not been able to have, in addition to Yardy, help these people. So I appreciate that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is board reports and comments, and I'll start with you, Commissioner Brazel, to my left.
Well, I do have one today, and as I mentioned earlier, I was surprised when Commissioner Harris and I were discussing the median cost of a home in Johnston County now. And I'm always approached several times a week by people out in the county and ask them, why are we continuing to let subdivisions be built, and why don't we halt subdivision approvals? And I don't think the public really understands that there are advantages and there's a downside to growth. But the advantage is we're able to increase our tax base so we don't have to increase our tax rate. The services we provide are going to continue to escalate in cost. And as Mr. Smith mentioned earlier, everything we do affects every rule we make, every little stipulation we add onto it increases the cost of the development and homes. And the builders, developers, they don't absorb that cost. They pass it on to the homeowner. So it just continues to spiral. And I think that as a board, we need to always consider what our actions do to all of the people of Johnston County. And they don't really understand if the development stops, there's the only way we're going to be able to continue the status quo is by raising the tax rate. And that is something I think that I would be against, the growth we got going now. So that's it.
Commissioner Godwin?
I started to talk about a public service announcement. I'm in a Kiwanis club that raise funds for scholarships and different things. We do it through collection of aluminum cans. And we get together once a year, and it is a major job. And when you start tearing apart these plastic bags with all these aluminum cans in it, and you find people thrown in metal cans and glass bottles, and it all has to be separated by hand, I promised myself last Saturday, if I got a chance to speak to the public at large, please don't put that stuff in with aluminum cans. It is a pain in the butt. And as far as growth is concerned, I'm reminded of going to the Mudcat Stadium up here to a ball game, and you get in the seat, and the one on the right and one on the left is empty, and you say, this is great, I'm here at the ball game, and there's nobody here. And then after a while, somebody shows up and sits there. And that has lowered your quality of that ball game for a little while. And then someone else shows up and sits here. Well, they've all got a right to see the ball game, and we've all like to say, I'm here, I'm comfortable, I don't want anybody moving next door, but that's life, and we have to put up with it. So.
I like that analogy. Vice Chairman Harris?
No, sir, I'm good. I appreciate everyone's insight to the issues that we've faced. Some of these are very complex, and I'm thankful that we have a board that puts a lot of thought and effort into all the decisions that we make.
All right. Commissioner Brazel?
I think I've said enough today.
I'm just going to piggyback on what you said, and I think the public needs to know that this board especially is very passionate about creating smart growth, and I'm really excited about the planning that we're doing, behind the scenes to make sure that does happen. Everybody deserves to live here, but also have a good quality of life, and like you, I get those questions all the time too. So I think it's something for the public to keep in mind, that we are working diligently on making sure it's smart growth.
Any comments before you? So I do want to announce that for lunch today, we'll be meeting with the Tourism Authority at Smithfield Recreation and Aquatic Center, maybe affectionately known as SHRAC, here, and following adjournment of our meeting here this morning. So, and now I believe I need a motion to go into closed session.
Okay, I move the board go into a closed session for the purpose of consulting with an attorney employed by the board in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege pursuant to NCGS 143-318-11A3, and to discuss matters relating to the location or expansion of industries or other businesses in the area pursuant to NCGS 143-318-11A4.
Second.
All right, motion is second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We will now go into closed session after.